Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Kane's independent media production, Snare Spotlight Day. Super excited about this. This is a drum unlike anything you've ever seen before from Zikit. This thing is crazy. This is going to be an unusual Snare Spotlight episode because there's sort of two parts to this. We're talking about this drum, but more importantly, we're talking about a special feature of this drum, which currently is not visible. First off, let's talk about what this drum is. Zikit worked with British Drum Co. to make this drum in particular, your standard kind of 6x14, Birch shell 10-ply, 5.5 millimeters, so still pretty thin, walnut finish on the outside, 10 lugs to a side. Fairly, standard snare specs, the sorts of things you'd expect. Has sharp 45-degree bearing edges, medium snare beds, nothing too dramatic. What's really dramatic is under the hood and what we're really here to talk about today, which is the device that Zikit makes. The big surprise under the hood of this drum is that it can actually be converted from the visible 14-inch diameter to a 12 or a 10 on the batter side on the fly with a lever on the side of the drum. This piece of hardware right here is actually inside of this drum right now, and it basically doesn't change the appearance of the drum at all, but this gives us this kind of superpower of having 3 drums in one at any tuning. Now, the reason we have this drum with this installed is basically so we can demonstrate it for you, but the real magic of this device is that basically pretty much any 14-inch drum, you can just install this inside of it. It's one hole drilled and the rest of it just attaches to the inside of where the lug bolts pass through the shell, and then you're basically good to go. We're going to start off with just the 14-inch drum without any of the inner mechanisms engaged. Beautiful sounding Birch drum, sounds like I expect Birch drums to sound, dry, punchy, pretty loud. And now we get into the fun part. We're going to start dialing in these inner kind of sub shells. A really great feature of this mechanism that I was utilizing today, and you're going to hear in a moment, is that in addition to engaging this inner bearing edge, you also have 2 different settings for how much pressure you're putting on the batter head from within. So you can kind of just come in contact with it for one sound, or you can exert a whole bunch of pressure, give it a little bit of a higher pitch and a cleaner edge to that new kind of inner drum. First off, let's hear it at the 12-inch setting. And now, let's go the other way. Let's use the 10 this time. What I really like about this is that with a little less pressure, you get an added degree of kind of muffling to it that gives it a little more of a processed sound, a little bit more of like a little bit of a muffled sound kind of thing. But since it's an edge going all the way around, it doesn't mess with overtones. It doesn't make it feel weird. Each of these basically feels the same as the wide open drum. It just feels like things have been raised up a little bit. If any of you out there are also guitar players or are familiar with guitars, this is sort of the same as a capo. You know, if you have a guitar and you clip a capo on one of the frets, you just raise the whole instrument up in terms of the open strings. This is basically doing the exact same thing. We're actually just raising the pitch of this drum by shrinking the diameter with a little bit of pressure on the head. Now, let's jump into a back-to-back comparison with a click so you can hear basically the same groove, just going through all these different settings. Now, if you're like me, you probably select the drum that you're selecting on a given day for the music that you're making and the sound that you want to hear in the context of that style. The cool thing about this particular situation here is that you can do that in this one drum instantaneously without messing with the wires or anything else and not even touching any of the tension rods. When I first sat down with everything disengaged inside of the drum, it just sounded like a beautiful 14, which, you know, made me want to play like rock stuff. Or, you know, pop things, sort of like middle of the road stuff. And then as soon as I put the 12 in, especially on the more muffled setting, it made me think of hip hop things. And anything else basically where I wanted to suddenly have like a super dead sort of sound, which I oftentimes see people using on a secondary snare. And then if we jump up to the 10, immediately it's giving me ideas about playing jungle grooves. Or kind of trappy stuff, like down-tempo electronic things. Or any other sort of situation where I would imagine wanting something pitched super high, maybe like a little sort of Middle Eastern, you know, dance kind of groove. And it's important to note that all of these sounds follow with the wires off as well. You're still shrinking the size of the drum. You're still raising the pitch. So you can go through that as well and get all those sounds you like with the wires off with all of these different sizes. Now, the most alarming thing to me about the demonstrations that we put together today is that I didn't touch any settings on this drum a single time. When we were getting ready for the first demonstration, we set the wires at attention, and the only thing I touched the whole day was just the thing to tension the inner bearing edges. This kind of versatility, I'm not even going to call it a gimmick. This is actually like this is a tool, because on a gig, if there's a tune where you want a little snare, whoop, you have it. And then you want to get back to a big sound, you have it instantly. You don't have to mess with anything. It's in tune because it's round. It's coming up on an in-tune head. It's not messing your tuning up at all. I didn't touch the wires. This is one of the most exciting devices that I've seen for a snare drum, really honestly, that I can remember. You can really think of these as presets, almost like you'd have like in a digital pedal or in your, you know, recording software or something. On the gig, when you flick that switch, it's going to go right back to where it was. And when you take it off, it's going to go right back to where it was before that. Now to the retrofitting. This device has a US patent. It's utterly unique. I've never seen or heard of anything like it before. And if you are thinking about retrofitting a drum with it, it's worth knowing that pretty much any 14-inch drum will work with this. They also include a jig that's very cleverly designed and engineered specifically to cut the one hole that you have to cut in the shell if you're going to be retrofitting it. And it's the hole for the lever to adjust the mechanism. The rest of it all just is held in place by screws for your lugs that are already in your drum. You just take them out, set it inside, screw them back in. Super non-invasive. At the end of the day, you're basically adding value, sound, options, I mean, the whole shebang to any drum that you install this inside of. And to top it off, it costs less than pretty much any drum that I could think of that I would be buying. One big question that I was wondering when I first got here and started looking at this in particular was, how much does this mechanism weigh? How much weight is it adding? It turns out that the whole mechanism itself is actually very lightweight. It's around 3 pounds. So you're not adding a lot of weight to the drum. You're not adding a lot of stress to the shell. You're already using holes that are cut to hold it in there. So you're not adding more holes to the shell either. It's really as minimally invasive as it could possibly be, especially considering that it's turning one drum into 3 or 5, really. Oh, and don't forget that this was all at one batter head tension too. So depending on what tension you're starting with, all of the ranges of all of these things are going to be different. So you're getting, you're really getting 5 sounds at whatever tuning you choose to set the batter at. Never mind that we also didn't touch the snare side either. Thanks so much to Zikit for sharing this with us. This is one of the most exciting technological devices for a simple snare drum that I can remember seeing. It's amazing that you can get it in a drum, you can get it on your own, you can put it into most any drum that you want to put it into. It's versatile, it's lightweight, it's hyper functional, it's engineered beautifully, and anything you want to know about it, you can jump through the link below the video, learn all about it, learn about pricing and options and all that stuff. I'm still kind of like amazed at how much versatility came out of basically as simple of a snare drum as you could put together. Wood shell, 10 lugs, 20 strand wires.